moving on to our first big movie release. Now, this movie did come out in theaters in January, but it bombed. And I blame the marketing more than anything else, because uh, the trailers did nothing for me, and it looked really bad. And gosh, watching it at home was a really big surprise that okay. So before I go into my review, let me just off the bat put some rules down so we don't have to discuss it and we can just go straight to our review. This is a rated R movie. It is not for kids. This is for probably teenagers. Okay, well, you do the parenting thing and figure out who this movie is for. I was watching rated R movies when I was 8. I saw Saving Private Ryan in elementary school and I was just fine. But everybody has their style of parenting and what movies they're allowed to watch. So whether you're 8 or you want them to be like the rated R movie 17 and up, then that's your call. I can't talk about that. My second thing that I want to say is I don't want to hear anybody complain about Kristen Stewart ever again, because oh my goodness, is she good in this movie? I loved this movie. This movie was starting out, it starts with Kristen Stewart just kind of trying to brush her teeth, even get to that. And like a few minutes later, something crazy happens that I won't go into. This movie held my interest the entire time. And the time that I was watching this movie, it went by so quickly because I was so invested in this story. Anytime you have a movie where like I guess I can't name the genre exactly, where you like Alien, like where there's people stranded somewhere in spaceship underwater in a closed out space and they have to escape. There's a monster like Alien coming to get me, or The Abyss, which came out in the 90s, where they're in like the bottom of the ocean and there's an alien out to get them. I mean, that kind of movies, like sci-fi horror thrillers set in some kind of closed off, where they're stuck inside a spaceship or some kind of thing and they can't get out, and the monsters inside of that thing with them, and they have to figure out a plan how to like make, like protect their crew, protect each other, find a way to beat this thing, yet at the same time trying to escape. That is any movie. Any movie. Cloverfield Paradox came out in January last year. Terrible film, but I watched it because it has the same storyline. People in outer space, somewhere stuck in space, and there's this alien thing coming to get them. I hated it, but you do that type of storyline, you're going to hook, line, and sinker me every time, no matter how bad or good it could be. So this movie, like me and George actually tried to see this a couple of times. I remember we were like, oh, we should see Underwater, but none of us were like kind of like really enthusiastic about it because we didn't really know what this movie was really about. And that's why I blame the trailers. The other thing I want to say, and I'm going to make this off the bat, I hate these like super, cultural political movies, like where, yeah, feminism and women's right. No, I believe in that. I have no problem with, of course, women should be allowed to be a superhero or a hero just as a guy should. No problem. But when you shove it in our face and make it so damn obvious that like the last Ghostbusters movie, gosh, I just like things like that piss me off. But Captain Marvel, Wonder Woman, great. It's not really about women's rights. It's just a great freaking story about a character who's a female and she's the hero. And this movie has so many throwbacks to so many great movies like Alien or Aliens with Ridley. And she even Kristen Stewart did a lot of things that really, oh my God, this movie was so fantastic. This girl is smart. She is able to put her fear down and make calls throughout this movie that is dangerous. And it feels all natural. It doesn't feel like it's an issue at all. You're like with her the whole time. You're like, yeah, that sucks, but I agree. That's a good idea, even though it's probably going to lead to a really bad idea. But with your decision making, what else are you going to do? There's some things that I want to talk about in spoilers that I can't wait to get into. Guys, I watched this movie twice. The characters are one of the side characters is so funny. He's in Deadpool. I forgot his name, and he's in that show Silicon Valley. Tim Miller or something like that. The actor's name is. He plays the bartender in Deadpool. He's in this. I don't know. I know there's some issues with the actor that I just didn't even follow, but he's really funny in this movie. He really brings the tension down when things get a little too heavy. But at the same time, when the things get heavy, you're like, oh my gosh, like this is the appropriate response at the same time too. So there's a moment where it gets too much, but then there's a funny moment where you're like, that you need to laugh right now because that was 5 minutes of just scary stuff. And the other thing I wanted to say, if you don't like quarantine and you hate being in closed space like your house or apartment or wherever you live, you probably should not watch this movie because this movie is all about quarantining the people who are in this. The story goes they're underwater, I guess they're drilling under the ocean. I'm sure Shannon or George can correct me if I'm wrong later. And they're doing some kind of experiment. I don't really know. There's this crew that is sent out to do these experiments for whatever reason. And first, I think it's like
it said if you read the newspaper parts at the end, they were a gas company and they were drilling oil lines.
the point is, yeah, they're doing drilling of some sort or other, and they're really deep in the ocean where it's probably not safe for humans to be. But I guess this is set in the future because I don't think we have technology like this that exists today where you can have like entire bases underwater. And you know, I I just I just that's I'm like trying to figure out what to say that's not spoiler. It is some form of creature, but I can't tell you what it is. So I don't want to ruin it for you guys. Just trust me when you watch it and as the story progresses. And even in our spoiler talk, if you guys got a chance to watch Underwater, come back and watch this because we can discuss more about that. But there's something happening that is kind of supernatural in some way, shape, or form. And it's something that is scary, and they have to find a way to get out, get back to the surface, and that's basically the entire movie. Um, Kristen Stewart and this guy, they survive a horrible something that happens, like some kind of earthquake, and then they meet up with the captain of the base, which is not spoiler because I saw the trailers just to make sure, and those were in the trailers. And they're trying to figure out exactly what's going on for majority, more than half the movie, and they're trying to figure out how to walk across the ocean to another base that could be potential a safe zone for them to get help. And it's really good. In fact, I would say right now it's better than Invisible Man for me. I really love the crap out of this movie, and I really liked Invisible Man, but this movie was just everything I wanted it to be. I watched it twice because I missed so much stuff, and I'm so glad I did because the second viewing was even better for me because I knew where it was kind of going, so I had more time to kind of like digest all the more of the information and what the movie was trying to present. Man, this is like 9 or 10 out of 10 for me, guys. Like this movie shocked me to my core that how much I ended up loving it, and I can't wait to talk about spoilers because I really want to talk about that supernatural stuff that takes place in the movie. I'm gonna throw it over to George first because you were the first one to tell me we gotta go see this movie. So I really feel like I should throw it over to you, so you can tell us your thoughts on this movie first. Sorry, Shannon, I'm definitely coming to you. Don't worry.
All right. So, um, my take on this movie was pretty interesting. Yeah, it was very similar in quite a few ways. I'd have to say to Alien, where basically they're trapped and they don't have all the resources available to to survive necessarily. And so yeah, it was really interesting, and I do like that style of film. Um, I might have had a issue with some of the suit designs. I'm not sure. I didn't quite like them because they didn't quite seem I don't know, as realistic per se as they might have been. But There
Just to
were
be clear, those what do you call them? Sorry, say it again.
the suits.
The suits. The suits though they were wearing are the same suits that they have been wearing the last 10 years to go deep underwater under pressure. So they're actually designed exactly like the suits that we have today to keep the pressure from crushing you and whatever they do. So even though they do look clunky scientifically, that what those suits are supposed to look like, if that makes sense.
Okay. But yeah, the rest of it, I guess I would have to say I was really impressed, definitely, with Kristen Stewart's acting, and also the comedic relief there by that one other character. Um, yeah, it was a very good film. I would have to say I was shocked it was that good, because yeah, leading up to it, I was like, oh great, this is another just trapped underwater movie kind of thing. And I had just seen what was that other movie? It was like 47 meters down or something. But it was another movie, but it was almost like was it Jaws or something? Something where it's they're being attacked by sharks. I I've I'm a little bit scared of water myself. So watching those kinds of movies is not like my favorite thing to do, because it definitely gives me some anxiety. But yeah, so this film, I might prefer it in a space atmosphere, I guess you could say, because I'm not quite as scared of space, believe it or not, as I am of water, which makes no sense. but but yeah, so because of that, it was still a good film. It's just not quite what I'm into, really. Shannon, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, like you guys said, Kristen Stewart really blew me away in this. I was not expecting her acting to be this great. Part of that's because they cast her for kind of the perfect character for her to play, who doesn't emote very much, and part of her character is that she keeps her emotions pretty flat. But that worked really, really well here for her acting style. And I want to say I'd love to see Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart do a movie together again 10 years later with much better acting skills and a movie that they actually care about. I think that would be fun to see how different it could be. Um, as far as underwater, yeah, I was dreading watching this. Like, I did not think it was going to be good. The trailers were terrible. I thought I was just going to, zone out during this one. And then about 10 minutes in, I was completely hooked. So I jumped so hard at one of these scenes that I almost threw my laptop off the bed. I'm so glad I didn't. But like, I had my laptop in my lap and I went, oh, and I jumped so high. So this movie got to me, freaked me out a little bit. I lifeguarded for 10 years where I would watch people in the water and make sure that they were, not going to drown. And I've saved a lot of people from drowning. So these kind of movies where it's underwater, that freaks me out a lot. Like, it's very uncomfortable for me to watch drowning scenes because I know how to save the person and I just want to go in there and save them. I was also a swimmer for a long time. So even being a swimmer for 10 years, like, being that far down underwater is terrifying, um, especially when you know what it's like to drown, or you know what it feels like to hold your breath that long underwater. Like, it's pretty scary. So I enjoyed that aspect of it. I almost was a little disappointed that they brought in the supernatural stuff. I think I would have liked this movie better had it just been them against nature, them against the world. I always really like those space movies where they're stuck in outer space. It reminded me of Gravity a lot, with Sandra Bullock, where they're just out in space and they just have to survive. Um, I'd say the weakest part of this movie to me, I think they needed to have another half-hour runtime. It was a very short movie. It's only an hour and a half. When I first started the movie, I was like, "Oh, this is great. I'll get through it real quick." At the end of it, I was like, "Wow, another half hour with these characters would have made me care about them a lot more." The guy who has the bunny, was it James? The guy that, I think it was
Which
John.
guy? Sorry.
The funny character that has the bunny.
Oh, I know the actor. His name is Tim Miller. I don't remember his name.
I think it was John or something, James
Okay.
or something. But or Jim. It was Jim. he has a little bunny that he carries around and he cracks jokes the whole time. Like that character was really interesting, and I wanted to know more about his backstory and more about him as a person and who his family was. Emily was a really interesting character. Like, how did she get to be the person that goes down there when she's constantly freaking out about everything and constantly on edge? She seems like the type of person that would not be allowed to go down underwater on a dangerous mission, but she got down there as the research assistant. So I wanted to know more about her story. They didn't really show any romance between the two leads, or the Emily and, see, I can't even remember his name, the guy that she liked. So I would have liked to see more of their relationship so that I feel more for them towards the end of the movie. And they don't show anything of that. So I did enjoy a lot of it. I enjoyed the survival aspects. I enjoyed the performances and the characters, but I would have liked to actually see a half hour more.
So I actually Googled it while you guys were talking, and it's called thalassophia, coping with the fear of the ocean. It's like a phobia, thalassophobia. Anyways, something interesting to know in case you're wandering in the deep ocean, because I know a lot of people who are more afraid of like being in the water, even if it's a lake and it's not an ocean, like where they can't see what's underneath the water, and they're just terrified to get even in the lake. Like they'll go in a swimming pool all day, but they refuse to go into a lake, a pond, the ocean, anything like that, where they can't see the surface or if it gets too deep. The other thing I wanted to say, okay, yes, for me, I don't really, I want to know snippets of the character because I want this movie, as we talked about earlier, to be a survival movie in space or underwater. So this is a lot like Alien. So Shannon, I don't know if you've ever seen Alien, but Alien's about this crew. They're a crew that's out in outer space in the deep parts of space, and they're doing a job, and their job is to find whatever this energy is to bring it back to Earth. They're a crew, they're on contract, and you get snippets of their backstory, like a little bit, but it's mostly just about the situation that they're in. And Ridley, who is a lot like Kristen Stewart's character, she's kind of a badass. Like she's will make decisions while everybody else is scared. She'll go full into like, okay, but this is just what I have to do, so I'm gonna do it. So a lot of things that are very similar in this movie, even the jokey guy that you guys are talking about, there's a character in Alien who's a lot like that, who makes like snarky comments here and there, even though it's a really tough, scary situation. There's even a story about like, you got to know the captain. The captain was actually really cool, but his story was like he's trying to get everyone safe. You got to know some of the other characters like Emily and her boyfriend, or I guess they were a couple. I don't even know. They just liked each other. I think they were a couple. And she, even she, you got to know a little bit of their relationship and what that looked like, but enough to kind of care enough as you're going, because you don't really get downtime in movies like this. And there's a good reason, because if you give downtime, it takes away from the thriller, like high pressure moments, and you can't have that. That's not what these movies are really made for. So yeah, just my final thoughts before, because I really want to talk about spoilers, guys. So I'm probably going to give this movie a good solid 8 or 9. So golden popcorn. If you like these types of movies, you have to see this movie. If you're not into scary quarantine space movies like Alien or Abyss, you probably should skip this. But if you do like it, you definitely you should check it out for sure. George, I'm going to throw it over to you with your final score before spoilers.
All right, so my final score before spoilers would be, I'd have to say I would give this a 7 because I think that it's a really good film, and if you're into like the Alien films, then this is definitely one to watch because it's pretty cool. So yeah, I would definitely say at least a 7 there.
All right, thanks, George, for your final score. Shannon, what would you rate this movie before spoilers?
Yep, I agree with George. I'd say 6.5 to 7. Probably 7.
Okay, cool. So here's my reason, and I can't wait to talk about this because this is so awesome and why I watched this movie twice, and I haven't stopped talking about it for about a week straight since I've watched it. So spoilers starting in 3 seconds. Here's your warning. If you like what we were talking about and it's definitely up your alley, definitely check it out and come back and watch the second part of this review so we don't spoil anything for you, or you don't care about spoilers, which is completely fine too. Let's see, share screen. Okay, so first and foremost, can you guys see everything on my screen by chance, the website?
Oh, yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
familiar with Cthulhu. I didn't put those two and two together, but yeah, that makes sense now.
Yeah, because the first time I watched it, I'm like, that looks exactly like Cthulhu. So I read this book back in high school, and I am in love with this book. This book is so amazing. H.P. Lovecraft. Another book he did, The Color Out of Space, which is terrible. But here's a movie that I actually like of H.P. Crafts, and it's really interesting. It's a story of hidden away, buried in a dark underground city deep under the ocean, Cthulhu is older than the sun and the stars, like nothing that has ever walked the earth. He is part man, part dragon, part octopus. He's a being of unimaginable cosmic proportions. Beholding this form is enough to drive the sanest man into the lowest pits of hysteria and despair. Although he is near impossible to find, even for the most devout and deranged of his followers, he has the power to find you. He has the power to invade your dreams and unhinge your thoughts forevermore. Okay, this book is one of the most scariest books I've ever read when I was in high school, and it's also one of my favorite books. Nothing has ever pleased me more, and I didn't know he was in this movie, which is another reason I kind of blame the trailers, because when I watched, I'm like, that looks like, does it? And so I Googled it and it was like, yeah, this is exactly who that is. And I was like, oh my goodness, deep under the ocean, it sleeps and hibernates. It gets woken up by these people who have built bases like underground cities. When you get to the last like 20 minutes of this movie, there's an entire base that looks like a city, and it's beautiful, and I was just like in awe of like what this movie was showing me, because I was like, oh my gosh, why would you not tell us this before we went to go see it? So many people who have been dying for this story would have seen it, and now that they've confirmed that that's exactly who that monster is, um I gotta say, heck to the freaking yes, is this movie amazing. This movie jumps from, like, you guys, if you've never read the book or not paying attention, I can get why you're saying 6 or 7. But for me, this is awesome. This is exactly what I want from a movie like this. I mean, just look at this. Just look at this. This guy wrote this story, and the pictures you're seeing are from the book itself. And that's basically Kristen Stewart in the movie. And like all these guys who have to like invade. It is, and let's talk about more even just the idea of this book. I mean, it's about people who are facing something so out of the ordinary, a monster and a mythical creature of epic proportion. Like, this thing was huge, and I really hope it gets a sequel someday, because man, I would love for the money to be put where we can see images like this, of what happens next. As Shannon was saying earlier, at the end, the government hides all kind of information to keep people from where they can't tell the story of what actually happened down there, and all of this stuff. This is a setup to a sequel that could be really, really good, and I really hope somehow we get it. Kristen Stewart did an amazing job. Maybe she survived at the end. I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe she did. Maybe she's just hibernating. Something happens that keeps her alive. We don't know. I'm pretty sure the movie was trying to say she died. But her performance was so great. This story is so good. I'm guys. I am nerding out that this movie had this. I have wanted a movie like this for 20 years, and it happened in a movie that's nobody even heard of. Good lord, like, man, like, this movie was to me one of the best movies ever made, because they finally put this on screen. I'm gonna throw it over to you guys. Who wants to go first? Just raise your hand and I'll throw it over to you. George, all you, buddy.
All right. So I honestly had no idea that that's what this was about, because I watched the video game actually. So I I thought the video game was rather interesting. I never had a chance to read the book yet, but yeah, it was wow. Sorry. That photo is just wow. But
That's the movie. That's what it was. Like crazy.
yeah, that's pretty amazing. I mean, that's like the underwater Godzilla. They're a variation just about. Um, wow, I'm gonna have to rewatch it now. Now that you mentioned that, because I really didn't know.
Yeah, Shannon, I'll throw it over to you next.
I have a shirt somewhere that says "Cute Thulu," and it's a baby Cthulhu holding an ice cream cone. And I also own a book. I have it right here, actually. I could get it. I own a book that is a parody novel of Twilight. And it is basically Cthulhu love story with with a young teenage girl who falls in love with Cthulhu. It's a parody. It's meant to be funny. But so yeah, I didn't pick up on the Cthulhu stuff, but I see it now. So that's really cool. I've never read the book. I'm glad that you liked it. I'm glad that you got what you were looking for out of it. I thought the same thing at the end. Like I think they should have set this up for a sequel because it was that good, and I don't know how they could do a sequel now. They definitely showed like she dies at the end for sure, but the way she sacrifices her life for the love story, it brings her character full circle because at the beginning you can see her holding her heart necklace, and that means she probably lost somebody or somebody's up there. And then they talk about her basically having a fiance who died, and then she gives up her life in order to let the other two lovers or that care about each other have their life together that she missed out on. So I thought that brought the character full circle, and it was pretty sweet.
Yeah, so I just wanted to pull this picture up because this is kind of like the city underwater. I mean, you can definitely see some huge similarities between the base that they were trying to walk to and how big it was, and how this thing was just kind of like hovering over it. This thing had, obviously, it looked like what they were trying to show was it had some form of babies, or it was giving birth to all of more monsters. Oh, no way. Bring that up when we go into full screen, Shannon. That's awesome. Um, that's so cool. We'll definitely see it when we close off the share screen part. But yeah, guys, if you've seen this and you're watching this part of the story, you gotta check it out. You have to. I mean, I'm just so happy this movie exists. I'm so glad that um, they worked so hard to bring this story to life. Even if it's a lot different from the book, it has a lot of, things that I wanted to share. So uh, yeah, that's just my few cents about the monster itself. Oh, I got to talk about a lot of the deaths were kind of. I mean, I knew the black guy was gonna die first because that's just what every movie does. The first black man is to die. First 20 minutes. If you've never seen Deep Blue Sea with Samuel Jackson, you should watch that. Poor Samuel Jackson was trying to give a speech in that movie, and shark comes and just eats him in the middle of his speech. That's awesome, Shannon. So you own? Can you hear us? You can unmute yourself and talk. You've owned this stuff from the monster itself.
Okay, so here's the background. If you guys have ever watched Channel Awesome, which is a movie review channel, Lindsay Ellis, the nostalgia chick, she wrote a book. She did a web series where she crowdsourced a book, and this was right about 2013 when Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey were huge. So she said, we're going to write the worst paranormal romance novel we can possibly write, and you guys are going to help me do it. And so she had it crowdsourced, and we all came up with ideas, and you would watch and tune in every week. And the book is called Awoken. And they came up with like a fake character name for the author. And it is a paranormal romance about a 16-year-old girl named Andy who falls in love with Cthulhu. And it's hilarious. It's a very good parody. You can still buy it on Amazon. And
That
I went to a convention in Canada to meet the author because I'm obsessed with her channel. And they were wearing these shirts at the convention. So I was wearing one of these shirts because I watched her show and she recommended buying the shirt. So I was wearing the shirt at the convention and I got the book signed by the author. And I was so happy. It was the best day of my life.
Yeah, as you guys can tell, there's a huge following for Cthulhu. I'm sure me and Shannon aren't the only ones who
I'm all
know.
tangled up.
That's yeah.
Hold on, this microphone, it's not
This is
working.
definitely going our end of the year bloopers. Shannon learns that the movie we watch is Cthulhu and then puts on a shirt with Cthulhu on it. And you're back out.
Hold on, I'm gonna redo this.
Okay. I love it. Look at if you guys are watching, check out Shannon's hair. It's
I've
just like
never
all
had
over.
this much trouble getting dressed since I was 3 years old. Haha! Okay, we're gonna try this again.
George, do you have anything to add? I don't really have much more. I feel like we're
Oh, I did have something. So one of the issues I did have with it was there was one scene where I think it was Kristen Stewart. She's like, "Well, I'm the skinniest here, so I'm gonna go through this area." But they're all wearing like the same size suits. So I'm like, how does this make sense? She, granted, I think she was the skinniest or second skinniest. I'm not sure of the group.
maybe like Emily
But
was the other skinny one, I would say.
yeah, yeah, but the problem I had with it was they were all still wearing their suits. Like
Mm.
they're all just almost the same size suit at least. I mean, by
Mhm.
the end of it, I mean they were just putting on random suits that they found. Like it wasn't like it was a specialized suit for them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
It's true.
so it was like how does that make any difference if you're trying to get through this area? But
I mean,
that was the only issue I had.
yeah. I mean, you can nitpick this movie. It's not the most perfect movie. It's really not the best movie or the story. Love it. Thanks for sharing that, Shannon. Um, put that next to your shirt and just like kind of hold it next to your shirt. Yeah, that's awesome. But yeah, I I gotta say, I'm gonna read this book just so you know. I love Cthulhu stuff, and I've been dying to read more stuff with it. He's such a fascinating.
It's a really bad book intentionally. Like it's a Twilight parody.
That makes
It's
me
a
even more excited to watch
it's
it because it's a parody.
it's
Twilight wasn't even a parody.
there's another one of the author's signatures.
That's so cool. But yeah, I might have to give a shout out to there's a YouTube channel that she has that wrote the book you said.
Yeah, Lindsay Ellis.
We're gonna have to put that in the bottom down if people are interested in
The
reading the book or
the
learning
web
more.
series is called Booze Your Own Adventure. Every week they would get drunk and they would write another chapter of the book. It was great.
That sounds amazing.
It was one of my favorite shows ever.
So yeah, I gotta say that, you know, just with everything, stay on this. I mean, like it even explains why Kristen Stewart is even in this movie, because if it's like a parody like Twilight, maybe they're throwing some more cultural stuff at you that you weren't supposed to pick on. I didn't even know that existed, and but now I can be like, okay, my score is even getting higher and higher for this film. Nice. We do have to start moving on. I don't know what else we can add about the spoilers, but yeah, I loved Kristen Stewart in this. She's got acting chops. She's always had acting chops. Everybody in Twilight is terrible, like Sharon was saying, like Robert Pattinson and her and everybody else is really good in other movies. But I just feel like, you know, this movie had a certain genre it was trying to hit. I wish they could have just been honest about that from the get-go, from trailers, because a lot of us would have shown up and watched this movie in theaters back in January. So I do hope that they get some kind of chance to make a sequel or like a straight to streaming Netflix movie sequel or a TV show of some sort. I would be all about that. So yeah, my score still stands at 9 or 10 out of 10. It's not a perfect movie. I just love it. I loved this movie. I love this movie more than even Invisible Man that came out this year. There's another movie that reminded me of what Shannon was talking about with like falling in love with the Cthulhu is the movie called Shape of Water. One of my favorite movies that came out, I think 2 years ago. It won Best Picture actually 2 years ago, surprisingly.
Was it
Uh,
good?
it was great. It
Oh,
was amazing. It's like a good version of a Tim Burton type movie, but that's actually good. I hate Tim Burton and all of his stupid crap. But that movie won a
Edward
Best
Scissorhands
Picture.
is good.
It's okay. That's all I'm gonna
I,
say.
I like a lot of Tim Burton. His newer stuff's terrible, but Nightmare Before Christmas is great.
Nightmare Before Christmas is probably my favorite movie, but all the other stuff movies he's made to me are just like okay to bad, including Batman. I'm just not a fan of his. He could do something interesting, but he never does. He just makes it, I'm wacky Tim Burton, and Tim Burton's wacky. Here's a wacky story. Did you ever want to see Batman with Tim Burton and Jack Nicholson? And this is the Batman movie for you. And just Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with Tim Burton. It's wacky. Johnny Depp is playing Michael Jackson.
I did hate Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. That was terrible. And Alice in Wonderland.
And I like Alice in Wonderland because I think like he actually held back from making it a Tim Burton movie and just a movie about Alice in Wonderland. I was shocked that it wasn't as wacky or creepy like his other movies. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying I like Alice in Wonderland more because it's less Tim Burton and more close to the book of Alice in Wonderland.
He was originally supposed to do the Mary Poppins remake.
And that person, whoever thought that was a good idea, should be shot. Just kidding.
If you read the books, it makes perfect sense why.
Mary Poppins? You muted yourself. I can't hear you, Shannon.
The books are really wacky, so it makes perfect sense if you read the books why Tim Burton should do a Mary Poppins remake. It actually would be perfect.
I liked Mary Poppins Returns, and I like Mary Poppins. I don't want to see a Tim Burton movie, but that's me.
Now that I've seen Tim Burton's Dumbo, he shouldn't be allowed to do anything ever again.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know why people just. You got George with that one. I have no idea what's going on with him over there. George, what you laughing about?
I just thought that was absolutely hilarious. I just completely trashed Dumbo.
You know what's really funny? I was so bored a few
Terrible
weeks
movie.
ago. I tried watching it, and I couldn't make it through 10 minutes of it because it was just so bad. It was so bad.
I've never seen a worse character than the little girl in Dumbo. They
Oh,
had
yeah.
no personality, no plot, no just I'm gonna be a scientist, and that was her whole. That was it. That was her whole character.
That's oh, Shannon, where'd you go?
Oops, I'm good.
That's the funniest thing. Okay, we gotta move on. I love this movie. I'm glad you guys were able to experience my love for Cthulhu. I'm so glad Shannon brought her love for Cthulhu out.